Hello, friends. Welcome to this another episode of Metrics Media. Pakistan and India are locked in a fierce political as well as legal battle over the Himalayan state of Kashmir for over 7 decades. Now, ever since India abrogated the special status of Kashmir on 5th of August 2019, we haven't heard a single word of condemnation from leading countries of the world. None has actually asked for the reversal of the special status that was accorded to Kashmir via the United Nations, several resolutions that were passed in favor of Kashmir. And some of the resolution basically placed limitations on the Indian as well as the Pakistani control over the disputed state. But despite that, India forcibly annexed that region, and since then, there hasn't been a single word of condemnation by any country. Pakistan has continued to play its bit, its part as far as Kashmir is concerned, whether it's at the United Nations or the other international fora, but to no avail. Now, this begs a very fundamental question. While the United Nations stays relevant to a number of other disputes across the globe, it has helped in the resolution of those conflicts, but it seems helpless on Kashmir. So we would like to put this question to Hasan Aslam Shad Sahab, who is a legal expert, has a very keen observation on India-Pakistan affairs, lives in the Middle East, where Palestinian issue has also been simmering. So Hassan Sahab, welcome. And the basic question is, why has there been no real reaction on the annexation of Kashmir by India in 2019?
Firstly, thank you very much for getting me on your show. This is a question that I have asked myself many times, because I am asked this question by a number of people, and you are asking me the same question today. It's a question that bothers me. It's a question that makes me deeply think about the options that Pakistan has, and makes me wonder why the international community is not moving on Kashmir. Now, the answer that I have been able to get after pondering this question is that international law, which we all invoke when it comes to any disputes, is in the end a law between equals. So sovereign states have made this law to govern their relationships with one another, and the broad parameters of the law were created post 1945, when we saw the end of the Second World War, and the countries that were behind the creation of international law were the allies, the victors. And obviously, when you have a set of countries who have won a law, who are making a new set of laws, they will always make sure that they protect their interests. And this is why we see the veto powers that are given to certain countries in the UN Security Council, for example. Now, this is just an example of why international law is not an equal law per se, why it's implemented differently. So I just give you the example of the foundation of international law is based on the interests of some countries who wanted to preserve their own rights. The second reason, which I believe has led to international law not having the force that we wanted to, especially in relation to India and Pakistan, is because international law is largely hostage to geopolitics. Realpolitik plays a big role in countries' relationship with on a bilateral as well as a multilateral level. Any treaties and conventions that are negotiated between countries are all the result of or have within them the self-interest of various countries who are negotiating those treaties. When it comes to India and Pakistan, let me say this, the world, despite all that we see happening in India today at the hands of BJP and RSS, the world still holds a soft corner for India. And there are two reasons for that. One, India has been able to make its story. It has a convincing narrative, a convincing story that it has told the world. And second is because India is a population of more than 1 billion people, and the world has trade and economic interests in India. And third, I think, is partly Pakistan's historic inability to argue its case more forcefully at international fora.
Yeah, let us get back to Pakistan's role at a little later stage. Would you say that all the talk of respect for sovereignty of other countries basically becomes secondary when it comes to intense bloc politics, global bloc politics, but that you are referring to?
Look, I'm not going to say international law is not relevant. I'm not going to say international law does not apply in certain circumstances. We have examples of international law being upheld also, but there are clear violations of international law happening as well. There are situations where international law becomes a secondary concern. For example, when it comes to geopolitical and geostrategic alignments, trade interests, investment-related initiatives, all these things lead to international laws force getting diluted. So in a way, international law is not as uniformly and consistently applied as domestic law, for example, in certain countries in the world.
So it's basically applied in a typical exceptional way. Would you agree with that?
There are violations. There are situations when, for example, in the case of Kashmir, we have clear United Nations Security Council resolutions that have laid down very clearly that the expression of the people of Kashmir shall be expressed by through the democratic method of a free and impartial plebiscite. So the law is very clear, but the implementation of the law has not happened to this day because of geopolitical reasons, because of international law lacking force and enforcement.
So when we agree that basically the respect for sovereignty, respect for the UN-sponsored promises such as plebiscite in Kashmir are not enforced because of intense, fierce global bloc politics, then what chance does Kashmir have? What chance do the UN resolutions on Kashmir have for any enforcement or implementation?
My argument on this, which I shared earlier in a webinar, is that Pakistan, that law does not apply in isolation. Law applies in a certain environment. So in today's world, we see that social media is used for creating stories and narratives, and and it is used to make people believe or unbelieve or disbelieve in certain things. Now, Pakistan should use social media. Pakistan's state should use social media, and that can be done by way of op-eds, by way of publications, international publications. We should do that. And another thing that has been lacking in Pakistan, unfortunately, in the past has been that we have not made a one-to-one outreach to different countries to tell our part of the story. This is something that we must do. For example, if we are to take Kashmir as a question to the International Court of Justice, that will require a United Nations General Assembly resolution if we are to get the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice. To do that, we will need 51 votes. Now, looking at today's situation, it's an uphill task. We need to engage with the world at a broader level. We need to make sure that we reach out to countries on an individual basis and tell them that these are the facts. And we have to prove that we have clean hands, that we are looking for self-determination of the Kashmiris as opposed to any territorial gains that we may derive out of Kashmir. So this will require a lot of hard work. You see, it will require mapping out countries. It will require follow-ups. It will require a proper flexing of your diplomatic muscle. It's no easy task.
It's a formidable task you are demanding of the state of Pakistan. But tell us, what role can the European countries play, particularly major European countries, because compared to the United States, we observe a lot of adherence to fundamental human rights, to the Charter of Human Rights, UN Charter of Human Rights, to the Geneva Conventions. So there is much more acceptance of UN conventions on human rights, on sovereignty within Europe compared to the United States. So do the European states have any role to play? Can they do something? Can they move India on this issue?
Outreach to countries means that you reach out to all the countries in the world and you go to the major power centers in the world. So Europe is a major power center. European countries, like countries from other regions, are parties to many international conventions and treaties. Europe has a past that it fears. It does not want a repeat of that past. Europe was one of the European countries were behind the initiative to set up the United Nations Charter along with America. So these countries have seen the hardships of war. Now, in order to educate them or in order to tell them what's happening in India, we will have to make efforts, as you use the word, formidable task. Yes, it is a formidable task. And to do that, Pakistan state will have to reach out to them, share evidence with them, and convince them that we are having clean hands. We are not trying to get any political mileage out of this. This is actually something in relation to people who have been suffering for the past 75 years. And of course, when it comes to negotiations, when it comes to going and reaching out to countries, you also have to keep in mind that there is a give and take. So if, for example, the world tomorrow agrees, which is a big if it agrees to hold a plebiscite in Kashmir, then of course it cannot just be Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It will be all of Kashmir, which means Azad Jammu and Kashmir also. So we have to really think this through. We have to. The point I'm trying to make is I'm giving some food for thought. If we want a resolution of this dispute, we will have to go out of our way. We will have to do things differently than what we have done in the past.
Yes, indeed, this is a formidable task for Pakistan to pursue an out-of-box approach. As far as Kashmir is concerned, the odds are very high. And viewers, as Hasan Aslam Shad Saab has said, this is a long way to go to mobilize opinion, particularly in major European capitals, in favor of Kashmir as a humanitarian as well as political issue, and not as a communal issue the way the Indian government, the BJP government, has been trying to project. It is primarily an issue of the right of self-determination for Kashmiris, several million Kashmiris, and that requires both India and Pakistan to be more pragmatic, to be more concerning about the humans, the Kashmiris who have been living in the Indian-controlled Kashmir, as well as those under the Pakistani control, where they still enjoy a lot of liberties. And right now the issue is the major issue is that of the Kashmir Valley. And this is Pakistan's contention, but Pakistan seems to be lacking as far as approach, the reach out to global powers is concerned. So let's see whether the continuous perusal of the Kashmiri cause at international level can yield some positive results as far as the Kashmiris' right for self-determination is concerned. That's it for today, and thank you for watching this episode of Matrix Media, and we will welcome any feedback, any reservations, observations from your side. Thank you very much.